we'll start off with a smudge. I'll do a prayer, and then we'll have Marianne provide us a song. Ani moka Jesus miwani gangang kom na dijinkas chimising donjaba wabja shido dem. Good morning, everybody. My name is Curtis Kopagog from Chimnasing, part of the Martin clan. I'm Cultural Services Supervisor for the West Region for Dnaagdawenmag Binnoojiiyag Child and Family Services. I'd like to give thanks for our elders, our knowledge keepers, the ones that have passed down those teachings, the language, and the ceremonies to us, for our own healing, our own well-being, and for us to learn and continue to grow and to have a better understanding of our roles that we play within our community and the responsibilities that we carry. Today we think about the ones that have gone missing and didn't make it back home. We think about those women, those young girls, and those families during this time for their loss, or the ones that have fell victim to violence. And we pray for health and well-being in our families and our communities so that we can learn to walk in harmony again with one another, to play the roles that we would have played in our communities, and having those responsibilities and the understanding of what those responsibilities were. The women in our communities were our leadership and continue to be our leadership and continue to be the voices for our people. So we pray that they're held with that love, kindness, and respect, and that they can be supported in the work that they do. So us as men, as brothers, as fathers, as sons, as nephews, and as uncles, so that we can support them, to have their voices heard, and that we can walk in balance again. So we say miigwech, and we'll pass it over to Marianne.
Thank you for coming together once again and for bringing our minds together, Curtis. So my name, Mohawk name, as I sing out to creation. Dnaagdawenmag, that's my clan. I'm Wolf Clan. And Ginyakahaganii, I'm people of the Flint here from Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Last year, about October, I sang a song for our women, and that song came to me, as songs often do, in a spiritual way. So this song is called Not Forgotten, and it talks about, that we remember still, what's happened to our women, and that we're turning things around. And in the song, there's a part that goes fast. And when I was, when that song was coming, I could see our women running, right? Running away from that danger, running away from that harm, running away and hopefully, to something better. And we are the things that are better here. The women here today, the men here today, standing, before them, we are the better. And we have to do better. So this song is called Not Forgotten. Yohoweha, 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 Anayoha, 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 Anayoha. Anayoha, 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 Oh, my sisters, can you hear us? Do you see us on your way? We are standing so proudly together on your way. We remember you always, forever on your way. Anayoha, 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 anayoha. We are sisters in spirit. We are standing beside you on your way. We are singing out your song. We are righting all the wrongs on your way. We carry your memory in our hearts forever. Honor your way. Honor your, honor your, honor your, honor your way. Honor your, honor your, honor your, honor your way. Your way, your way, your way. Yahweh, Oh, now we'll go for that. Thank you, everybody, for joining in and, bringing all this beautiful energy back to where it should be with each other, talking and sharing our stories and being a part of remembering, always remembering, and trying not to repeat, those mistakes. So I'm a Haudenosaunee, and if you don't know about Haudenosaunee women, we are the center of everything. And in our communities, we've forgotten that a bit. We have forgotten that a bit. And when we go back, in the past, to help ourselves understand that, we understand that first from Sky Woman, right? Our creation story. Sky Woman came and she was pregnant with a female child. And what we understand, right, is that's 3 generations right there, because that female child also carries the eggs for those next generations. And that, as we came to this earth, the earth fell in love with us. The earth, all the animals, they took care of us in the beginning, and they fell in love with us as the women, and we fell in love with them. And, we started to care for our Mother Earth, and we were those first flowers, they say, the first beautiful flowers in this world. And every line of female person after that is a descendant of those beautiful first flowers that came in our creation story. So, the way that we looked at our life was just so empowering and so beautiful and so humbling as women to understand, that beautiful spiritual energy that we have that plays out, in this feminine, as this feminine force in this world. And then we see, that, or we're told that the faces of our unborn children are resting in the earth, in our Mother Earth, just like a child would rest in our womb. Those spirits of those babies, right, are resting in the earth, and they're waiting to choose a mother. They're waiting to come up into this woman, right, this beautiful woman, to use her as a mother and a portal into this physical world. And that just, in itself, just is so amazing. So we have this beautiful womb, right? And when we choose to have, come together and have this child, and that child chooses us, we are birthing this beautiful new spirit, right? Because life is one of the most, it is the most fundamental, important thing as for Indigenous people, for all over Turtle Island, life and the continuation of life and those cycles that continue. But the spiritual elements that are attached to them to help us understand, especially as women, our true power that comes from our Mother Earth, that comes from those children, and that we're here continuing to give that life, and the power that we have that is inside of us radiates from that womb, radiates, from our ability to give life as life givers. And in our communities, we were just elevated because of just being able to do that, that respect. And they often say, that, women, that pain of childbirth, only women can do it, right? Not just because biologically, but because it would kill anybody else. It would kill a man if they ever had to try to do that. So powerful is that pain. And so capable are we as women to endure that and to bring forth that new life and to bring forth that new life into our communities. And we still continue to do that. And that alone, right, elevates us to give life. So that power is starting to play out differently in our communities. And we see that spiritual power coming to life more as our women are stepping into those traditional roles and understanding that power and being able to speak their mind and speak in a way that upholds those old ways, right, in this contemporary life, that those traditional values are still playing out in a good way, even though we've had our fair share of challenges as women all over Turtle Island. We are still continuing to understand ourselves, to understand how to use this power in a way that helps those next 7 generations, those, in our communities. So I'm thankful, when I look at my lineage. So Haudenosaunee women were matrilineal and not matriarchal. We're not Amazons. I know I could probably be one if I wanted to. But that power comes from our mothers through the rights that we have as women, through that matrilineal heritage. Our clan system comes through our clans come through our mother, and we uphold those. Our rights in political power, come through our mothers. Our right to dethrone or to empower the chiefs in our communities comes from our mother. The way we operate in our clans with our clan mother, that power is a very sacred feminine force. So we're very, very matrilineal in that way, and understanding where that power and those rights come from. So my father is Frisch, right? And a lot of people said, well, why do you want to be Mohawk? And I was like, you know what? Like, I am the best of both of them, and I'm the best of all of my ancestors, and everybody else is too. And as a woman, though, I inherit the rights of my mother and who she is as a Mohawk woman, to be, capable of these things in my community, to be a clan mother, to be able to be a part of decision making, to be able to be a part of my nation. And those things are bestowed on me, even though I have the best of everything. So that importance of a Haudenosaunee woman is also plays out in our voice, in our advocacy for those families and our loved ones and those little ones in our that we're helping today in our communities. And I think about my sisters and my mother who is not doing well, but who was such a strong force in my life. Everything I know about being a woman was because of her. Everything I understand about being a Mohawk woman is because of her. And, she is so gentle and so loving. And that force for her was a way for her to take care of her family, to direct us in a good way to help us achieve who we were, as women, who we are as women in our optimum, capability to continue on, right? To be those continuing flowers in the lives of our families, in the lives of our communities, in the lives of, even this organization. And we celebrated, right, a couple of weeks, or just last week, those our directors, a feminine force, right, who are guiding us with that love and that understanding, that gentleness that comes from that sacred feminine. But we also are working, right, in balance with our men. We need our men. We love our men. We want our men to be strong, to stand beside us, to walk beside us, to understand those traditional roles that still play out in our everyday lives. That we need each other to make good lives for our children. And there's an Inuit leader, Larry Muircliffe, who talks about, that sacred womb, right, of all creation. So we create life, but we create other things. And you've heard me talk about that. And he talks about that, like we carry the universe in our womb. And when women come together, when we come together to talk about things, we create beautiful things. We create beautiful lives for our family. We create food to sustain us. We create clothing to keep us warm. We trade ideas. We beautify the world in a good way with our beading, with our that creativity that flows through our communities and empowers us and empowers those next young women that are coming up. And you can see our women are using their voice in a good way. They are sitting in those powerful positions now, right up and even in the mainstream government. Our Indigenous women are not visible anymore. We understand our value. We understand, that we were vulnerable at times and we were taken advantage of times, and that violence and harm has happened to us. But we're holding each other up now. We're counteracting that, and we're still loving. We're still kind. We're still women here who are being that force that are guiding our agencies, that are guiding the world. We understand our rights now. We know that that's where that power comes from. The center of everything, the center of this life, the center of your families, and it's so important. It's not an ego trip. It's a necessity to understand that, for us all to understand as women the rights that we have for bringing our families together, for being political powers, for taking ownership of our homes and our lands, and deciding, and once again, how we are going to do things, because it always comes out in love and peace and harmony, and it restores the balances. And we need our men beside us to do that. What they say is, when we come together and we create like that, all our men have to do is protect us, because you will benefit from what we create. You will benefit from the children that we make, from the love that we give, from all those good things that are happening in our community. And we give that, right? Continue to give that to our female children and our male children. We keep passing it on and passing it on, so they understand, how to use that in a good way, to use it for their communities. So I'm really humbled, by this responsibility. It's a big responsibility to be a woman, right? It's a good one. I think there's even a song, maybe Tammy Wynette sang about that. It's hard to be a woman, but it's also a beautiful thing. And for all those, that have gone before us, for all those sisters that, left this world in a hard way, let's stop that. Let's change that. Let's be the voice. Let's be the advocacy. Let's be the change we want to see for our women. Let's stand up and empower ourselves, so we aren't taken advantage of and those things don't happen to us. So I want to say Yawagoa, and I want to talk more because this this is just one of the most beautiful subjects I would love to talk about more. But I also want to share this opportunity and this time with our men. And so I'm going to turn this over to Hilton. And I want to say Ganarumkwa to all of you for listening, Ganarumkwa, for being here and being present and for giving that loving energy. So we'll give this to Hilton now. So, tak Nico. Now we'll go on.
Much, Marianne. Very, very good words. And it's very, very fitting that the way she talked about how it used to be in our communities with how the women were held highly in our communities. And in the creation story, the Ojibwe creation story, it talks about how it was our mothers who helped us make this entry into this physical realm, and we're the ones that picked our mothers. And so me being a boy or a man, if I would have heard this when I was as a young boy, I think things would have been a little different for me, in terms of respect, because when we think of the 7 grandfather teachings, those were what were being conveyed at a very early age, and a lot of that was the community's responsibility, but it was the women who kind of upheld that, like the compassion, the I guess more of the tender side of things, because let's face it, men are men, and they're just some of us, we have to keep our ego in check, and that's because of we're stronger, we have deeper voices, when we think about men's violence against women, some of those things there, it's like, I remember listening to one of my teachers. I call him a teacher, and it was in a program I was in, and it was a men's program, and it was called Tending the Fire. And one of the things he said in there, the teachings of that program were how to be good workers in communities, but there was a lot of teachings around men and how we were to be. And that was listening to women's teachings, listening to women's songs, and listening to women's ceremonies, that we were a part of back in the day, because as firekeepers, when women were holding their full moon ceremonies, it was the man who was there taking care of that fire, like as Marianne had shared, around being a protector. So in that program, one of the things that really stuck out with me was that it was shared that when a man makes a choice to strike another woman, he's the one that's making that choice. It's nobody else making that choice. And the program we were in was to help us understand who we were as a man and our place in society, in an Indigenous community, the communities we lived in, and so when I heard stories about my mom being the one who, I picked my mom to bring me into this world, and it really made me think about how I was, how I wanted to be as an Indigenous man, because some of the things I had learned growing up, not having, or maybe just not being able to listen, because there was men in the community who were teaching me things, but sometimes they weren't the best things, and it was a woman who really brought me back, put me in my place, so to speak. And my older sister was the one who could say, smarten up, and that's all I'd have to hear. And I listened, right? And so I was the only boy in my family, and so there was a lot of women in my life growing up. I would go to my grandmother's, and there was my aunt, and my aunt was a single mother, and so both my mom and my aunt were single mothers, and they brought us up. They brought us up the best way they could. And my mom and her aunt, her sister, the women's side of the family, they were from the Hoof clan, and I could really see their characteristics from what I know today about the clan system and how they were, like part of those teachings around the deer clan is that they're the kindest animals in creation and they do not take life. Even though my mother struggled with her personal wellness, I could see the kindness. I could see the caring because of what she did for us. Like being a single mother, little did I know when we were out harvesting birch bark, she was making quill boxes so that she was probably putting food on the table with that. But me being a little guy, I'd rather go and play baseball or play football. So when she said, in June it's harvest time for birch bark, I got a little ticked, right? Because that was my mom, and she said, it's time to do this. And I knew when we went out into the bush, June up north, you're either attacked by black flies or mosquitoes. So it was a very and you got, when you're climbing trees, that's how it was done. You get eaten alive with mosquitoes, right? So, but little did I know that, my mom, after the birch bark was picked, I would see her making these quill boxes. And if she knew the prices of quill boxes today, she's probably rolling over in her grave, because I just seen one the other day, and I'm telling you, my mom used to get $7.50 for a quill box. And you know what they are today? I'll tell you what they are today. I seen a box not much bigger than what my mom would make. They're $800. So there was my mom, and she just diligently working away. I remember sitting with my mom one time, and I was just we're picking quills. I had to help her separate the quills, and she was telling me, oh, you need, the big ones are too big. She said those will break. Here's the ones I want for this part of my work. And so I'd be sitting there, and my mom would have quills in her mouth, and I always wonder how she did that, right? So I tried it one time. That's even a skill. Having porcupine quills in your mouth, right? Trying to, as she worked, she would just, and it was so it was amazing. It was amazing to see my mom. Remember my mom in that way. My mom wasn't in my life a long time, but she was there, and she did, like I said, the clan system with the Hoof clan, they follow that way of life, and they project it, and you can see that. You can see that. And had I known, what I know today about our clan systems, I would have listened. I would have listened to her. But of course, with colonization and Christianity, I could see how that really impacted our women in the community. Because of some of the violence that they experienced, that I experienced, and I would see that. So it kind of changed my worldview about how I seen women. So I really had to do a lot of work on that, to to understand what my aunt and my gram and everybody were doing for me, because being a young boy with no father, my mother was doing her best, right? She was doing the best she could to bring me up in a good way. So, I wanted to honor her today because of some of those things that she worked through, and I could see those. Characteristics of being from the Hoof clan, like say a Moose clan. Even today they say, when you're struggling with loneliness, or maybe something has happened, maybe you feel a little depressed or whatever, they say think about your clan system. And I did that, I think 2 years ago, and I was feeling that way, and then I remembered that teaching about. I remembered my mom being that Hoof clan, and it kind of took me to the Moose, and how they just, to get wherever they gotta go, they'll just barrel through stuff and they'll make it through there. Right? It's not that that's how we do it in life, but I could see the resilience in my mother. So I didn't, again, I didn't have my mother in my life for a long time, but what she left me was, I know today, is that's how that has made me a better person. Among my sisters, even today, my sisters, I have two sisters left. My oldest sister was kind of my mother too, because of things in my family that were difficult. So I had some really good teachers. In my life, and like in the drum teaching, it talks about how those mothers and aunties encourage the young ones to sit around that drum, so that they learn good things. They learn those teachings about that being the heartbeat of Mother Earth. They learn how to be kind, right? They learn how to be that caring person, so, and they also, learn, like back in the day, one of the teachings was when the men would go out and hunt and getting ready for hunt, it was a woman who took care of them, right? They fed them, because they'd go out and hunt for days, so they make sure they had food. They would smudge them, and they would make sure, they would kind of hold them up. They would hold them up because they were the providers, but they would hold them up so the men would feel good about themselves, right? And so when they went out and hunted and did what they took care of the fires, and they hunted and they gathered, um, they felt good about this. So that really took care of their ego, right? When the women were doing that, because it made the men feel good. So it really kept their ego in check. And when the women held them up like that, and they would come back, and of course they'd have all the food, and again, they were taken care of, because in those teachings it does talk about, how the men, even in that drum story, it talks about how the men would, they went and they fought and they couldn't get out of that, but it was a little girl who helped those warriors come out of that place of war, because they were there for a long time. So in those stories, those stories, it talks a lot about women, and how they have helped us over the years, but it's us men who have been more or less not taking care of our own responsibilities, right? But that's not our fault. It's not anybody's fault. When we look at colonization, when we look at all those things that have impacted us over the years, how that this has really taken away who we are. But again, when you see, like, look at our organization, there's men here, but not a lot of men. So the women are still holding the men up, to come to that good place. they're still holding the men up till we can get on board and start getting well again. You know, it's I don't believe it's out of reach because of where I came from. You know, and I came from that unhealthiness, you know, with addictions, you know, and with things like that, you know, like it really took me down that other road, you know, and the respect one loses for themselves is really, it filters out to everything else, you know, and even in my young family when I was young, like I had same thing, I had all girls. I had all girls in my own immediate family. So um, you know, there was many women in my life who taught me, and I also wanted to acknowledge the chief of our community who passed in 2006. But she was a chief of our community for 27 years, and her name was Flora Tababana. And you know, I remember her being a very strong woman. And anytime the police came to the reserve, she would be there. Anything, and then that's what she told the police. She said, anything going on here in the community, she says, I'm going to be there, or you let me know. You know, she was a strong woman, and there was a lot of things that went on in the community. You know, in terms of functions. Like I remember all those things that the sports, you know, the sports were always encouraged. You know, there was so many things that she had brought to our community. You know, and she was recognized for what the heck was it? Oh, she went to England. She was one of the chiefs that traveled to England when the Constitution was brought back to Canada, and she was also recognized when the minister during the first minister's constitutional talks in 1980. She was one of the women that went there, and she received an honorary degree from York University in 1998. So, you know, she had that, and she was from I believe she was from the Almec, the Beaver clan. So she was a chief. So you could tell, you know, she made sure that the community was building, much like a beaver, right? When you look at a beaver and what they build, you know, they're very good builders. And so when I look at my former chief, even though I didn't get those good directions, I did in a sense that I would, you know, I would, because I got old enough to listen to her and what she was talking about, and she was always a kind woman, you know. I'll be honest, I used to be a little delinquent, right? And so that wasn't very good, you know, because some of them thought I was a bad little bugger, eh? And but it was the chief who would come up and she'd say, you know, how are you doing anyway? I'd say, well, you know, I'm not, I'm okay, you know. And she says, you know, she says, you should start playing sports or something, you know, like she says, that'll be good for you. And, you know, being me, you know, I didn't really listen to anybody, but I listened to her. And I said, well, maybe I should start playing sports, you know. So I did. And sports were a big thing in my community. And I feel if it wasn't for sports, things for me might have went a little further down that other road, right? So I did listen to her. I listened to you know, the women in the community, and there were some strong women in the community too who would speak up and say, you know, like I said, my sister, smarten up, you know. And so many of those things, you know, when we're talking about our women, we have as Marianne was sharing, you know, we have gone away from how do we hold the women up, you know, as a society. And that's, you know, when we look at all the things going on in our communities, like worldwide, you, you know, it's like those teachings have been lost. so to speak, and we see how men are dominant, you know, over women a lot of times. And so I heard Jim Dumont talk about this, or Dominus, they talk about this one time. He said that, if we could go back to our teachings as far back as we could, we would have those original teachings. And those, a lot of our teachings are pretty similar, because all our teachings were about harmony and balance, right? It's like we all had different ways of keeping in balance. And of course, for us, as Ojibways, one of them is the seven grandfather teachings. And for the Cree, it's the medicine wheel teachings. And for Haudenosaunee, the tree of life. We all had those ways. So if we could all go back to those original ways of being, um, those teachings would probably have a lot to do with what we're talking about today, and how the women were. And um, and I remember my partner talking about her grandmother, and her grandfather was the trapper, but it was her grandmother who made the pelts into a beautiful thing, right? She tanned them. She even skinned skinned everything. They did a lot of work, you know. And so at the end of this was all done, they had this beautiful whatever it was, and it was the grandmother, And so acknowledging her her grandmother, my partner's grandmother too, and acknowledging her too, like she's been in my life a long time, as a friend. And then of course we being partners. um, there's many things that I learn, and sometimes I don't like to hear them. I don't like to hear that, but I know it's good for me. That's what my experiences have told me. They people, the women don't say that just because they want to be mean or anything. They say it because they love us, and they want us to be that good person who we can be. And I believe in spirit. I believe we all have those qualities to be that good person. So when we get to those places of ego or disrespect, or being unkind, that's the time to step back and say, like, who am I really? I am not this person. It's usually something that has come up for us that maybe we haven't dealt with yet, and so all those things. But a lot of times it's the women who can help us because of their compassion and their caring and their love. So yeah. And talking, and even talking about my grandmother again, and how she tried to teach me the language at that young age, and my grandmother was like my grandmother lost her legs to diabetes. From as long as I can remember, she had lost her legs early, I guess. But she would sit there, and every time I would come into the home, her home, she would speak Nishnawbe to me, right? She'd say, "Bish not in," which is go and get some water. And it was this little game my grandma would play with me, and so I'd go outside, I'd come back in, I say, "What'd you say, Gram?" And she'd laugh, right? Then she'd say, "Go and get some water." So the next time I come over, she'd say the same thing, "Bish not in." Very simple terms. Being a little guy, like, come outside again. "What'd you say, Graham?" And then she'd laugh. And then after a few times, when she'd say that, she'd say, "Bish not in." Then I knew what she meant. And I would go down and get some water, and all those little phrases, and that I learned from my Graham. Um, so there was many things I have to be grateful for the women in my life, and the women in my community, and now it's the women in my nation. Because again, over the past couple of weeks, I've seen our women leading us, and keeping us moving forward, especially in this difficult uh, time we're in, especially in child welfare. But it's the women who are standing up and keeping us moving forward. So they're still doing their thing, and we have to get on board. We have to get on board and to start picking up our responsibilities, start picking up our ways and following that good way of life, because it is about balance. We talk about the fire teachings. The women are the water and the men are the fire, but those go hand in hand. Those go together, because it's about um, the men aren't supposed to rage to boil the woman's water, and the woman's water is not to put out the fires of the men. So there's that balance, right? And how do we find that balance? Well, usually it's following the teachings. That's what I understand today, the teachings of the seven grandfathers, or the medicine wheel teachings, those four direction teachings, stages of life teachings, many teachings, listening to Haudenosaunee teachings, because they're all teachings about harmony and balance. And they're all about men knowing their roles and women knowing their roles. But how do we walk that road together? And it back in the day, that's how we got along so well back then, because everybody knew their roles and responsibilities. And I believe that's where I think we're heading there. I mean, I do believe, again, I do believe, I have faith. I've learned that at a younger age in my sobriety was I have to have faith, and which is what I have today. I do have a lot of faith. So that's all I have to share. But I was going to share a song. I am going to share a song. And Curtis, was there something else?
Yes, I'll share a little bit, and then we'll have you close with the song, Hilton. All right. So Anin Mukagizis Mimo Nigangan Kom the Dish Tas Chimising Donjwa Wapsha Shido Dem. Good morning, everybody. So again, today we're talking about the importance of women and the roles that they play in our families and our communities and in our organizations. We think of the ones that have not made it home, ones that have fell victim to violence, and we think of them, their families, their loved ones. Pray that they find that peace within their hearts. It may not be easy. my experience as a young, I still think I'm young, but my experience as a younger boy was I have 6 siblings, 2 older sisters, 2 younger sisters, and then my 2 little brothers. For the majority of my life, I was raised by my mother, aunts, one uncle that passed when I was fairly young, and my grandmothers. Didn't really have a chance to meet my grandfathers. I was raised around women, and I remember being told at an early age, watch out for your sisters, protect your sisters, look after your sisters, which to me I thought was a little weird because my 2 older sisters are 5 and 7 years older than me. Here I am, just a little guy, being told to look after my sisters, watch out for my sisters. So I grew up with the idea of, that meant protecting them. That meant, somebody came to harm them, then I would have to step in. But I remember viewing that way for a very long time. So I remember having this conversation with my mom, and when I became probably around 11ish, 12ish, she'd send me to go hang out with my older cousins, the guys in my family, and she said she would say that she's done that all she can, and that I'd have to go hang out with my cousins, and they could teach me about growing up and being that man. But I didn't have healthy men in my family. I didn't have healthy men in my community. So what I learned was the not so good traits. There's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse. There's still a lot of violence. So at an early age, I thought, when I was, I guess, 11, 12, I thought that's what it was to be a man. And for me, I relied on social media. And what portrays in social media, again, is boys don't cry. Men don't talk about their feelings. Men are strong. Men are protectors. Men are warriors. And so I grew up with this idea of, okay, well, I have 4 sisters, and I have my mom that takes care of us all. So my role is to use violence. If somebody comes to hurt them, then I step in and I protect them because I'm the guy, I'm the man. So for the longest time, that was my viewpoint. In my early 20s, I sat with my first elder, one of the first elders in my life, Nishmakwa. And when I went to go sit with him, when I was came across my life where I wanted something better for my life and getting away from the drugs and the alcohol, um, and focusing on my sobriety, I went to go speak with him. And that was the first time that I had the idea of what a healthy man actually is. Through some of those conversations, and talked about how do we express our feelings as men, how do we show our feelings, how to communicate to our partners, how to communicate to the women in our lives. But that was the first time, when I was about 21 years old, where I finally had an idea of what a healthy man is and what our real role is. And I learned from that. I sat with him a couple times throughout the next couple of years of my life, and he mentored me. He taught me. Came a time where I took a role within the community as a KJ coordinator, and we're in Toronto for training, week-long training, and we're learning about the different stats that we have in Canada, the different stats, statistics, all the facts, and it was a real eye opener for me because that was the first time that I heard those actual hardcore, those real stats, that real data. And I remember thinking when I heard that 1 in 4 women in Canada, 1 in 4 women are victims of violence, have experienced that violence from either somebody, their spouse, so it's domestic violence, or an outside person. And for me, that really hit home because I thought about it, and I'm like, I got 4 sisters. That means 1 of my 4 sisters have fell victim of violence. And when you learn the other stat that comes after that Indigenous women are 3.5 times more likely to fall victim of violence, I thought about all the women in my life, my sisters, my mom, my aunts, my grandmother, and I thought, what more can I do? I thought my job, my role was always just to be a protector of my family. So I thought about, what does that look like for my family now? So when I was leaving that training, going grab a bite to eat, or downtown Toronto, I was walking from the hotel to one of the closest restaurants, and I'm having these stats, this data in my head. Every woman I walked by, and I'm not the smallest guy, but every woman I walked by, I was watching their immediate reaction, and their immediate reaction is to grab their phone or grab their purse or take a couple of steps to the side. And I couldn't help but to think about my little sisters and wondering, what they must experience. What are the thoughts that go through their head? Just something as simple as walking down the street, having to walk down the street. So when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about, what do I want for how do I do more? What more can I do? I play this role within the community. I've held this role. Well, what more can I do? And I was thinking about my son, and I was thinking about my experience and how I'd want my son raised. And so him and I talk now that he's older, we talk about these experiences, we talk about the issues that we face in our communities and our families. And when I was talking to him this morning, I started this is really hard to do. I won't lie. Um, about 2 years ago when he was 7, I started to have these conversations with him about, what this day means and what this represents and how we, you know, walk in balance with our women and our families and our communities. And so we talked about, the role that our women played in the communities and the role that they play in our families. And this morning when I was talking to him and reminding him about some of this conversation, I asked him, I said, well, why are women important in our communities? And he goes, well, they're the ones that carry the next generations. And I said, that's exactly it. And we're talking about those roles and responsibilities. As men, we care for that fire. As women, our women care for that water. And exactly how Hilton shared, I gave him that scenario. What happens when we have too much fire? What happens when we have too much water? So that he gets that idea, he gets that understanding. So as a man, as a father, I try to teach my son that, what a healthy boy, what a healthy man is, what a healthy male role model is. And I think about my experience of when I was growing up, and I just want exactly the opposite for my son. So I feel that if you're having these conversations with your children, with maybe kids that you're supporting in the schools or maybe kids that you're supporting within our organization, there is no early age. There is no age cap to start those conversations, and that we should be open to having these conversations at an earlier age. And that can be done. It can be shared. We can talk about hanging that red dress either in the window or outside our house to acknowledge what this day represents. We can talk about wearing these red shirts, and we're thinking about those ones that didn't make it home. We're thinking about the ones that have felt victimized in our families. A lot of us have really close personal stories to that. But the most important thing is to share is, what does that mean to be that healthy male role model, to be that healthy boy, that healthy man. One of the things that I really struggle with is the saying that boys will be boys. And the reason why I struggle with that is we're teaching our young boys, using that saying, we're teaching our young boys that are men at an early age that it's okay to have hands on. It's okay to be rough. It's okay to show aggression. It's okay to show violence. That other saying that's attached to it is boys don't cry, men don't cry, men are strong, men are tough. And these are the messages that we still hear in social media today. So growing up with that mindset, we at an early age, that's exactly what my mindset was. Well, it's okay to show violence, it's okay to show aggression because I'm a boy, but I can't show any other emotion. So I remember being in high school and I acted like that. If I was sad or upset, it was easier for me to act angry or aggressive because nobody would ask me what was wrong. Nobody would ask me how I'm feeling. People would just automatically stay away. So I use that as a cover. I use that as a front if I didn't want to talk about my emotions. So I think about those experiences when I'm raising my son, and I teach him that let's talk. It's okay to have a good cry. It's okay to really open up about your feelings. And one of the reasons why I struggle with that is because I heard that from within the community. Well, boys will be boys, and I challenge that. I challenge that saying, because if I walked into any organization, in any community, and I said, well, girls will be girls, what am I implying? And how quickly would I be challenged on what I'm saying? So we need to challenge, as boys, as men, women in our communities, we need to challenge that saying that boys will be boys. And I do challenge it. I say no. I teach my son that it's not okay to have hands on. It's not okay to be rough, and we talk about that daily. Some of the statistics I won't flood you guys with statistics because I'm sure you guys are all aware, but some of the initiatives that support raising healthy young boys, healthy men, if we don't have that in their own families, the Kije Anishinaabe program, they help instill some of those traditional values, those traditional male roles and responsibilities. The Moose Hide campaign, Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, the White Ribbon campaign. There's a lot of great initiatives, non-Indigenous and Indigenous, to really help support and challenge that behavior of boys and men need to be strong, boys and men need to be powerful. The only emotion that boys and men can show is aggression or anger. It really challenges that mindset and promotes what we're talking about today. Ending that violence, stopping that violence. Stopping that violence in our homes, in our communities, but having the courage to use your voice to speak out against that. Because if we turn a blind eye to it, it's just going to continue. It's just going to continue, and it's going to impact the wonderful young girls, the women, the aunties, and the grandmothers that we have in our families and our communities. So my hope is to bring that balance back. My job as a father is to show my son what it is to be a healthy male role model, how to live that life, how to respect everybody, including our women, especially our women. And we talked about that today, about the leadership that our women play in our communities. And again, if you guys are looking for ways to have that conversation with your kids, it ties into that drum teaching. And me and my son talked about it this morning, is before we went to war, our men didn't just go to war. We consulted the female elders, the mothers, the grandmothers in our communities, because our women have a better understanding and value and respect life at a different level than just us as men. So again, there are ways to talk about this with your kids, to educate the children, to educate the youth, and to have those conversations. And I really, really feel that the more earlier we can do that, the quicker we will be to healing our generations, to healing that intergenerational trauma that we experience and that we walked, and not trying to find that in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, and giving a better life for our children. English. I'll pass it back to Hilton for a closing song.
Much, Curtis. I'm going to share the Women's Warrior song, and I believe it's a song from out west, a lady out west who wrote this song. And hey, 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 yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, 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 yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, hey, hey. Hey, 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 yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, 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 yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, 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 yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, hey, hey. Yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, hey, hey. Hey, 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 yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, hey, hey. Yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, hey, hey. Hey, 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 yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, hey, hey. Yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, hey, hey. Hey, 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 yaki oh ho, yaki oh ho, hey, hey, hey. ho, ya, he, oh, ho, hey, hey, hey. Hey, 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 ya, he, oh, ho, ya, he, oh, ho, hey, hey, hey. Ya, he, oh, ho, ya, he, oh, ho, hey, hey. Oh, my gosh. Much everyone, and have a beautiful day. It's a lovely day. Weather's getting nicer. Go out and get some vitamin D. Oh, my gosh.
You are here. Mati.